And yeah, I see you looking at the mason jar. I got the mason jar.
I know what you're doing. You're consuming water.
I'm consuming water, man. It's halfway there.
Very positive.
I might fill it up in the bathroom before I leave the studio here.
We got you. We have some real water. You can do tap if you want.
Fam, this is Minneapolis. You could drink the tap water.
Yeah, it's tasty.
Yeah.
It's good water.
Well, I don't know about tasty, but but you know what I'm saying? Like until they find lead in it, I'm still drinking it.
Yeah, it's solid, man.
Yeah.
All right, welcome to the 4th episode of the MP3Cast, a show where 3 friends talk about an album one of us picked, any genre, any year of release. I'm Johnny. With me is Scaffo.
Hey there.
And Patricio.
Hey.
All right, so this is the 4th episode, which means the album pick came back around to me. And I chose When Life Gives You Lemons, You Paint That Shit Gold by Atmosphere. It was released in 2008, and let's just get into it. So, first let's talk about the album art. What did you guys think of it?
It's pretty basic, but the sort of gold band around the darker background of the album is really fitting with the theme of the album. But aside from that, it's pretty basic. It's serviceable.
Yeah, I think the book almost looks like a journal, which is really fitting because this is an album with a lot of deep and personal stories in it.
Yeah, I can definitely see that.
I think that
I'd say, yeah,
that.
I think that's a book, and yeah, it's supposed to be like the stories that are the whole album's like a book of stories, So yeah. I think that's all. It's pretty simple though.
Yeah, not much to it. So with that said, let's jump right into discussing the album track by track. The first track on the album is Like the Rest of Us, which I think serves as a pretty good intro. And
yeah, I feel like this is a great setup for what themes the album's going to be tackling all throughout. Saying that, no one person is above another person. Everyone deals with things and is just trying to make it through life.
Yeah, it establishes the tone of a brutal reality of day-to-day life for people, not a lot of sugarcoating, just sometimes life sucks,
Which is commonly explored throughout the whole album. It's a pretty dark album as a whole, and this song definitely brings it out. But as a song itself, not an intro, but as a song, I'm not actually really feeling it.
Yeah.
It's kind of slow, and also the vocals are super low in the mix. The piano is a little overwhelming.
I didn't notice that problem, but I did think the song overall was pretty forgettable, Didn't
Try listening to it on like your phone speaker, and you'll definitely notice that.
Well, I don't think that's the ideal listening conditions.
Of course it's not. So. I'm just saying that, and depending on how you're listening to it, sometimes it's overwhelming.
Yeah, I will say the headphones I use to listen to my music are pretty treble heavy. They emphasize vocals a lot, so that might have been why I didn't notice it.
I don't know. I don't feel like it's as forgettable as you guys are insinuating. I think especially with the music, the melody all throughout stays interesting, I feel. It's not the same consistent beat throughout the entire song, which I really appreciate.
Yeah. All right, well, now let's move on to the next track, Puppets.
This one really stepped it up, and I mean, from the first especially in terms of rhythm and pace for sure.
Yeah, I really like this song. One thing I noticed about it that really makes it stick out in my mind is the chorus. I feel like it's really well done how the chorus has a lot of hard syllables, like P's and T's and stuff like that throughout, and they hit almost every time on the clap of the beat, and it really makes me energetic, It's a fun chorus.
Yeah, the chorus is really sticky, and it gets stuck in your head. You remember it, and it feels good.
Yeah.
The whole song in general just feels good. It's a really good rap jazz beat mix, and he does his signature, and this group especially does a signature thing where the whole first verse is basically just build up for after the chorus, where the actual beat backdrop comes in, and it just makes the song that much more hyped up.
Yeah.
Especially when those drums come in, and he tends to get a little more aggressive in the second verse, and it definitely shows here how well it works.
Yeah, definitely. I also think it's important to point out what the song is trying to say, because it's, pretty important throughout the entire album. It's sort of talking about this guy who is, kind of a junkie, and he's ranting and raving to the singer who's listening, and the singer kind of doesn't really pay his opinions too much mind, because he is taking no responsibility for his situation at all. Everything is someone else's fault.
Yeah, and that's something we see throughout the album, is like, not that, but that guy's wrong, basically. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, definitely.
Slug really likes to call people out on their bullshit.
Yeah, he does.
Even himself, though, just human nature and how people are hypocritical, and how people need to suck it up and be a little bit better. But then he also, in turn, turns around and says, "Man, life is really hard," and gets you down. And this is definitely a good show for that.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Also, I want to point out the great backup vocals toward the end in the chorus. That was a really nice addition.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
I don't know who the female singer there is, but she has a great voice that really complements the chorus.
For sure. It's not even like the softest or prettiest. It's kind of raspy like his voice, which makes sense.
Yeah. All right. Now the next song is The Skinny,
Your lips taste like his dick. I can always tell when he's been in your whip.
which is a bit of a change of pace, in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely. I want to know if you guys had as much trouble figuring this song out as I did initially. I listened to it like a good 5 times before something just clicked, and I was like, oh, that makes total sense. How did I not see that?
No, I got it from the first listen.
Yeah. What do you mean? Like, you had trouble with just the message of the track, or just interpreting what the story was?
Well, okay. What do you guys think? Tell me what this track's about.
It's about a pimp. It's pretty
And his
obvious.
hoe.
Yeah, it's about how
That's the whole thing.
a girl got sucked into this situation of being a hoe, and the pitfalls of it and everything.
All right. Let me blow your mind really quick. What if I told you it's not about a pimp? It's about this girl who's addicted to cigarettes, and the cigarettes are her pimp.
I feel like you're wrong, but okay, go ahead, elaborate.
All right, so there are many lines that support this. For instance, some of the really, really standout ones are, when he was around, you seemed mature. He helped you calm down and feel secure. There's Candy Pimp turned it down to a trick real quick. There's, at the end, they say all the cigarettes in the world get together and sing. And all of the sort of sexual innuendos that are throughout this track have to do with sucking, and that's it.
Okay.
And it always refers to him as skinny and white.
Wow.
Okay. You did blow my mind a little
Yeah.
bit.
Huh. I did not pick up on that.
Yeah, when it clicked, I was like, oh, that's actually so cool.
I guess that would be kind of his signature thing, and I'll probably look it up later to see what it is, but he tends to do that, so it very well could be. I was judging you there for a second.
But yeah, aside from that, the beat, especially the synths on this track, do a really good job of setting like a sort of uncomfortable tone, just because of the inflections for all the sustained synths.
Oh. Yeah,
I
now
didn't really...
I'm going back and looking at the lyrics, and it says, like, fly trick, light it. You know, that
Yep.
seems pretty obvious now that I go back and look at it.
Exactly. And early on it says,
lips
make you
taste like
suck
it's
it all
dick.
the way down to the ass now. And
Yeah, the butt of the
That-
cigarette.
yeah, and that could be interpreted or heard as ash instead of ass. Like, there's a lot of lines that just, when that
Wow.
clicked, I was like, wow, that's actually incredible.
Yeah, it kind of blew my mind. You're right. As far as the synths go, this song really did make me uncomfortable, but not in a good way. My favorite part instrumentally about it, though, would be the like suppressed drums. Like
Yeah.
they don't like fully ring, and that was the coolest part. But I actually didn't like the instrumental as a whole.
Yeah, I thought this song was a little bit like, it's, I don't like listening to it, and I think that might be part of the point, but
Yeah.
it's not one I want to go back to, you know?
Yeah, I agree. Once it clicked, I was like, oh, that's really cool. Now I don't really need to pay much attention to it anymore.
I feel like some of their songs and on this album especially are kind of like that. Like lyrically they're on point, but they're not like fun to listen to, and not even like an upbeat fun. There's like an upbeat fun and there's a dark fun, but like some of them fit in neither. Some of them are just like lyrically clever, but they don't really do much as a song.
I don't know. I feel like some of these songs not being fun is directly correlated with the themes explored throughout the track.
Of course, it's just a comment on the album as a whole.
Yeah, okay.
All right, well, next track on the album is called Dreamer.
But she still dreams after she woke. Tight hold on that hope.
I really like how funky the beat is and how upbeat this sort of story is, because this could have been taken a totally different direction.
Yeah, it's not even aggressive for most of the song. It gets aggressive for the last verse, but for the first part, it's just a story, and there's a lot of like sad parts that could get you down, but from the protagonist's perspective, this is just the way life is, and you just go through like that, you know? There's no sense being upset about it because you can't do anything about it, you know?
She does a really good job at like just taking the punches and rolling with them throughout life, and the track, the instrumental, everything just works for that theme.
Yeah, I don't really have much else to say. You guys kind of hit it on the point. I actually didn't particularly and personally like the instrumental. Just, I get how the funky part works with the song. I just didn't really like it. But I thought the mixing on this song especially was done really well. It's a subtle thing, but they leveled everything pretty great on everything I listened to. Really, really well done as a whole.
Yeah. I agree with that. I think it's a really well done song, but I think I like the last third of the track when it does get more aggressive a lot more than I like the first 2/3. But I don't think I would like that last verse as much without the first part, you know?
Yeah, I feel like it's a really solid build up throughout the entire track.
Yeah.
He always tends to shine, like, the more aggressive he gets, it feels like the better it is as a song, but his storytelling is always consistent throughout, no matter what tone he's using.
Yeah,
I
feel
really do like the last part.
I feel like it's better that he doesn't over embellish in the more aggressive styles. It sounds great, but he uses it more sparingly. That way it doesn't ever get stale.
It hits
Which is
harder when
important.
he uses
Yeah.
it, you know? It's more effective that way.
For sure.
Definitely.
And like you said, his storytelling is always really good, and that's what makes me like Atmosphere so much. They're one of my favorite groups, and it's because I describe them as like lower middle class music, you know? They capture the struggle that I think most people in America face better than any other music I've listened to.
Yeah, I can definitely get behind that after listening to this album.
All right, so moving on from there. Next song is Shoulda Known.
The lines of chalk that Benjamin Mike Cop killed the illustrations on them neighborhood sidewalks.
Speaking of lower middle class struggle and how they capture it, you know, this is a song about being attracted to a girl that's addicted to drugs. Or are you gonna show me another meaning that I didn't pick up on, TJ?
Oh no, I don't think there's any other meaning specifically to this one.
Yeah.
But I really like the imagery throughout this track, you know, showing that the guy views this girl the same way she views her cocaine.
Yeah.
And it's not even like a romantic sort of way. He's like putting her down and like, wow, like,
Yeah.
you are kind of a pretty awful person at this point, but still I love you, you know? Just the way this song starts off with the first verse, just saying naked in the bathtub, sit on the porcelain, and that whole first verse is so descriptive.
Yeah.
It starts out descriptive, and you really kind of, it puts you in that situation.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like there are like a couple specific lines that are just like top notch. One for the rhyme scheme, I really like Good Times Goddess, My Goodness, Goth Fingernail Polish, Autopilot Footprints. It flows so well.
Tons of internal rhyming and everything.
Oh yeah, it's beautiful. And then for more of a like imagery sort of view, the lines of chalk that Benjamin might cop killed the illustrations of the neighborhood sidewalks. That is... Oof.
Yeah,
it's great. It's so clever. They do a really good job of finding inventive ways to describe these sorts of feelings and ideas.
Yeah, and it makes you think about it in a way that you hadn't before, Because you have to think about the lyrics to understand them sometimes, it makes you really think about the situation they're conveying and helps you understand and empathize with people you might not otherwise.
And it's never like really simply put either. It's always so descriptive, and he really makes you sit back and think. And I guess this is kind of what puts him up there with like a real lyricist of rap music, even though sometimes people make fun of the type of music they make. Even like hip hop legends really respect Atmosphere and Slug in particular because of how well he writes everything, how detailed and descriptive, and like you said, TJ, that just his rhyme scheme, his flow, and how well things fit, but they still all hold meaning and weight. Nothing's ever like empty when he says it.
Yeah, definitely. And the varied ways, this is less about this track in particular, but more as for the album as a whole. The varied ways he delivers lines. He has a nice wide range, but it's all still very much his own style.
Yeah. His voice is just dripping with personality. You can't hear his rapping and think, oh, who is that? It's always identifiably Slug.
Definitely.
And especially on this song, I think Ant really did a great job of when to drop out and pull the beat back in to really let certain lines shine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This instrumental could have been very overwhelming with how it is, but he mixed it perfectly. And again, he drops it out at really perfect times too. It seems like it's a huge instrumental, but really it's not.
Yeah. I feel like it could be overlooked how well Ant manages the beats, because most of the time the beat is not even close to the main focus, but it ties so well into what's being said.
Yeah.
It's the perfect backer, and I think it's like a perfect pair. I'm glad these two are producing music together.
By the
I'm
time
sure they're making it at the same time.
Yeah. By the time this
definitely.
album came out, they had already been working together for 11 years. So it shows.
Yeah, and it shows. Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
This isn't something where they pick a random beat and he's like, okay, I'm going to write to this. I'm sure that he writes while Ant's making the instrumental.
Definitely.
All right. Next song is...
I'll start by saying I love this song. It's different because it starts on the chorus versus a verse, which is usually how it starts.
Yeah. And I really think it's interesting how like upbeat and happy the song is overall, but the sort of themes that it deals with are kind of down. They're not super depressing like some of the other tracks, but I wouldn't point to much of this song and say that's happy.
Yeah, it's about just getting through the day, when you work and all that.
Yep.
Especially for this waitress, I'm assuming is talking about, and this woman.
Yeah.
And he's just talking about and especially it makes sense for a waitress because they're working all day and they probably get hit on by tons and tons of men, and it can just be frustrating. Let me find the exact lyric while you guys discuss. I want to point one out.
So I think it's really a really good example of like how uncomfortable it can be to wait tables, because really you're working for tips mostly, because you're probably earning less than minimum wage and tips are supposed to make up for that. Your entire career at that point is kissing ass, probably to people you don't want to interact with at all, so that you can get as much money as possible.
Yeah.
and that
And
can
just-
be super draining.
Especially in the lyric I was referring to, which builds off of what you said, is, well, why they all got to be freaks, which they would just eat and leave and keep them eyes themselves already insecure, don't need any help. I mean, especially in that you're kissing ass to your customers, your boss, everybody. And especially as a woman in that profession, people are probably asking for their number all the time. And she just wants to do her job, but they won't leave her alone. And it's definitely, it makes you more insecure. You're thinking about how you look all the time.
Yeah. And I think the hook also is super important for this song, especially the "you don't know you" at the end of the hook, because there's so much going on in her life, and her just single day is just packed with stresses and things to think about. She doesn't really have time to get to know her, like what she likes, what she plans to do, anything like that.
Yeah. It's also a song about finding validation in other people as opposed to yourself.
Yeah.
Like, she's trying to find validation in the customers through tips. It doesn't say that explicitly, but it's sort of like hinted
Yeah,
at.
definitely. And then she's looking for validation at the bar after work.
Yep. So
And that kind of is also shown where he says, got a roommate to split the rent with, and now you never feel independent. That's her trying to feel independent by working, but she still can't even afford it. And this definitely is a very upbeat and happy sounding song, and it's actually kind of sweet that it feels like he's one of the only people who is taking the time to recognize this woman as a person rather than just, like he says, a piece of meat.
Yeah.
yeah.
And I also want to point out, it's interesting that this isn't called The Waitress when there's a song later called The Waitress.
Yeah.
Because this is very specifically, I mean, they're both about a waitress, but this one especially.
Yeah, this one is more, it's not just her in her career, it's her just in one day of her life.
Yeah.
For sure.
Whereas The Waitress is more focused on just her at her job.
Definitely.
All right. Well, the next song is Painting.
No color paint gonna cover the stain.
Paints a really great picture of an alcoholic.
Shut up, Johnny.
Yeah, it definitely does, and I think it's kind of deceptive, because it's like, it seems so sad and depressing. The track is really sorrowful, the words are so sad, but especially at the end of the track, he insinuates that he can use this paint that he has to, even though it will never cover up his regrets of the past, he can use it to move on,
Yeah. But I don't know. I don't think it's particularly uplifting even at the end with that. It doesn't really inspire much confidence.
Yeah.
It's more like because it talks about how he's lost in his regrets and all that, and I think that's just like the ending is further evidence of that. Like, he could fix his life maybe, but he's not gonna. He's just gonna keep.
But am I gonna?
Exactly. So
See, I don't know. I feel like even though the track is definitely sad, in the melody, I sort of noticed that all of the sort of tones at the end upturn. There's like an up pitch at the end of every tone throughout the melody. And that kind of adds just a small bit of hope to the backing beat, I think.
yeah, I guess.
I didn't really have that much thought in this track. It's kind of a forgettable one for me. And even though the instrumental gives a lot of way for storytelling, it's kind of like the first song on the album. While it may be good storytelling, it's not a song I'd particularly listen to for any specific meaning. It's more just like a venting track, I think. Not his personal venting, but venting through the eyes of somebody else. So, I mean, lyrically, it's just on par with everything else, but there was nothing analytic about it for me.
All right.
Yeah, I really think the main focus of this song, the only reason it sticks out in my mind is because of how vivid a portrait it paints of this guy that's struggling with alcoholism, and that's how he copes with him not liking his life,
Yeah, definitely.
But All right, seems like we didn't have much to say on that one. The next song is Your Glass House.
Take care of you when you're passed out. Right there with you in your glass house.
This song blew my mind when I heard it for the first time a few years ago.
Really?
Yeah, well, of course I was younger back then, and I wasn't really listening, and it was just kind of on my Pandora probably.
Yeah.
And it got to the end, and you know, the realization comes like, this is your house and this is your life, and I was like, wow, that it just stuck out to me, and I had to listen to it over and over again.
I felt like the surprise reveal at the end was kind of weak.
Yeah.
I don't know. I didn't really like it.
Yeah, the
Really?
song was like, it was decent. It paints a good picture as always. But I don't know. I feel like what's supposed to be the gut punch moment doesn't really deliver that much.
I agree
Personally, I guess I can see if you weren't really paying too much attention, and then that line comes on, because they do make it definitely easy to pick out if you're not paying too much attention. So I can see it having some weight in that situation, but if you're like listening, then I don't know. I don't feel like it's that big.
I think the weight of it comes from his vivid descriptions of kind of, again, waking up on the floor, and it's kind of like, and should have known. It's kind of like that. And he multiple times mentions like, how did I get here? What happened? Who is this? And then he's talking about taking a shower in you're in a stranger's bathroom. So a lot of it throughout the track, he's making it very clear this person doesn't know where they are. And then at the very end, them coming to the realization that this is their life and this is their house. To me, it's not like a huge reveal in itself,
Yeah.
but it's kind of like watching a movie where, you know, the protagonist is actually the antagonist, or like they have multiple personality syndrome or whatever. It's kind of just, it's not a huge like surprise, but it's also very interesting.
My problem with the reveal was, like you said, they reference too many times that she doesn't know where this is, you know? It's like, they keep harping on about that. It's like they wrote the ending before the rest of the track and decided to make everything fit into that ending, you know, as opposed to naturally building up to that surprise reveal.
Yeah, definitely. I do want to point out, though, the fact that she is, you know, after a night she can't even remember, in her own home by herself, and she has a bunch of missed calls, it seems like there are definitely people in her life that are looking out for her and taking care of her, even if she is a mess, which is a nice little bit of happiness to the song.
Yeah.
You're just trying to find the happiness in everything, huh?
I mean, that's the whole point of the album, is it not?
I guess when life gives you lemons, you're right. I thought the irony of this song was kind of pointing out, you know, people do drugs and drink to get away from their problems, but when they come back down, it's actually just worse in the end. Because if you can't even remember your own house, I guarantee that's worse than you were the night before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I also would like to say I do not like the hook on this song. I think it's poorly sung by Slug, and it's too short and repetitive.
Yeah, I'm not feeling this hook at all.
out of the 4 lines, I like the last 2 best. Take care of you when you're passed out, right there with you in your glass house. I thought that was good, but the first 2, the hook as a whole is pretty weak. I agree.
Yeah. All right, so the next song is Yesterday,
Chop it up and compare perspectives. Life, love, stress, and setbacks. Yes.
which is one of the best on the album, without a doubt.
And they're most
100%
popular.
agree.
Yeah.
Well, there's a reason for that.
Yep.
For sure.
This whole
I guess-
song really does a great job of making you feel for Slug, you know?
Yeah.
The nostalgic keys in the background, the production is really good, and then just his delivery, and it's so personal, you know? A lot of detail about how his relationship with his dad. Did
Yeah.
the surprise reveal surprise you guys when you first listened to it?
I knew it was someone someone very specific, and I didn't think father at first, for sure.
Same.
And when it said dad, I was like, oh. So it caught me off guard for sure.
the gut punch moment on the last song, when you compare it to this one, you realize just how weak it is, you know?
100%, yeah.
Because my first time listening through this, I assumed it was like about a breakup or something, a relationship with a girl that he wanted to work out but didn't. But then when he says, "But I know it wasn't you because you passed away, Dad," that part just hits so hard.
It really does.
Yeah, well, the first time I heard it was probably in Pandora when I was like 13 or something, and my mom heard it with me too, and it was on like a Christian rap station. That's kind of funny. And yeah, I thought it was about, you know, a significant other or a wife or something, but when he says, you know, it's about his dad, that was pretty gut-wrenching. And as a personal note, I saw him live with my girlfriend a few years ago.
Oh, I'm jealous.
At Life is Beautiful. Yeah, he showed up at Life is Beautiful. And at the very end, where he said, "But you passed away," he said "Dad," but then he mentioned a lot of other artists and rappers who passed away too. So it was kind of sweet that it was also like a tribute to all the good people who have passed away. Just a little side note.
Yeah. I also didn't like, not only did the dad part catch me off guard, but also the fact that the individual passed away. They all, throughout the track, he says "left" or "you're not here anymore." So I didn't expect that either.
Yeah, because that makes the whole chorus, you know, it's like, "I thought I saw you."
Yeah.
But that doesn't work if he doesn't build it up as like with "left" and "you weren't there" and all that.
Exactly.
Which kind of hits hard for anybody who's lost some loved one or, you know, or anyone who's passed away, because there's a difference in the beginning where he's saying, you know, "I thought I saw you yesterday," and, you know, wanted to shout their name, because you can always try to make amends with someone who's alive, but once they pass away, you can't do anything with that anymore.
Yep.
Yeah. And they never truly leave your mind.
Yeah.
There's
Very sad song.
so many great lines in this song, but my favorite is probably "Chop it up and compare perspectives, life, love, stress, and setbacks." I think that perfectly encapsulates the way they talk about life atmosphere, you know?
Yeah.
For sure.
That's
And I like when he said, we could both share a cigarette because we're both fools. Kind of like, you know, your parents want you to do better, but at the same time, they understand you best sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, then the next song is another standout to me, "Guarantees."
Can't save no nest egg. In fact, this nest is rented. In fact, that rent is late. Wait.
I think the 1-2 punch of these two songs together is a huge, like, gut-wrenching part of the album.
I never really thought of them together. Not really. But yeah, I can definitely see that now that you mention it.
Yeah. This song, when I said lower middle class rap, this is what I'm talking about. This is such a perfect encapsulation of what that life is like, I think.
Exactly. It's definitely like, it does such a good job of being relatable, because chances are most people will know someone like this or will have gone through something like this themselves.
Exactly.
And just the soul-crushing day-to-day struggles make it difficult to focus on anything that's more than a week out.
I think this song, along with Yesterday, makes me so appreciative for my dad, I'll say. 'Cause
100%, yeah.
Yesterday is about him losing his dad. Then this song is about, like, the day-to-day struggles that dads face, you know, what their life is like and how it can be tough for them, but they still go on and you still appreciate them, you know?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, lyrically, it fits the theme of the album for sure. And the peaceful guitar riff is the only instrument I could hear in this, unless I missed something.
It's the soul production.
Meaning, I think this would be really good in one of those like Apple or live sessions or whatever. You know, where they do it live in like the intimate ones or whatever. Just one other person in them in a nice studio. That it sounds like it would be a really good thing to perform.
I think you get
by yourself.
you get that sense without even it being performed live, just with it on the album. You know?
Definitely.
It-
It feels like that's what they went in to do. That was the intent of it. That was how they recorded it.
It's a super intimate song because of that understated production, you know?
Definitely.
Yeah. But next song on the album is Me.
Even though he was too young to hunt and gather, hungry puppy had to learn how to front and swag.
Yet another incredibly personal song. It's so clearly about Slug.
Yeah.
Like, he's just so intimate about, he like just blitzes through his entire life in one song, and he does a really good job of not sparing any words. Every word is there and for a reason, and nothing takes up too much space throughout this entire story.
Yeah.
It definitely was a hard-hitting one, and of course, yeah, it's definitely about him, hence the title Me. Just talking about, like, coming up from a child and how he's a man now, but, you know, he was... one of the lines I want to point out is if payback's a bitch, he'll be in debt forever. Definitely one of the darker lines of it, but kind of reflecting how he feels probably all the time.
Yeah, that line is just stone cold. It's so good.
And production-wise, the song is pretty haunting. The guitar is haunting, the woman's background vocals, and even though the singing at the end is nice, it's not like the best voice again, and it's very rough and gritty and rugged, which is kind of what the song is meant to be.
It's raw. It's just him, you know? It's not touched up to make it sound better, really. It's just him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
he's not trying to sound pretty.
Definitely. And I think the hook is just so important because it's like, you can know all my songs, you can know every lyric, but you don't know me. It's...
Yeah. But then it also hints to how he tries to find validation in women.
Exactly.
Unless you're going to come home with me. But I also like how he refers to himself as that clown on the stage.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of he referred to himself as a clown. They have a series of EPs called Sad Clown, Bad Dub that came out before this. They released an EP every 3 months for the different summers. So
that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's a nice throwback.
He does act like a fun-loving and funny guy, but he also writes about some really dark stuff.
Yeah.
Go ahead, DJ.
I think that's kind of important. I'll get back to my other thought in a sec, but I think it's important for there to be an outlet for, like, positive people. Of course they're going to go through dark patches. Of course they have dark thoughts. That's just human nature. Having an outlet for that is what really separates people from, you know, being able to be positive and not really, you know?
Yeah. On that point, just the other week, I follow Slug on Twitter, and someone tweeted him and asked how he deals with depression and like being down, and he says write about it. So you're 100% right. That's his outlet.
Yeah, definitely, and you can really see it in his music.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I think it's really significant that he refers to himself as that clown on the stage. I've heard from a lot of people that have this sort of following that it's really weird and uncomfortable being this sort of, like, you know, thing to gawk at. You feel kind of like an attraction.
For sure. Yeah. And that's not the only time he refers to himself as a clown in this album.
Yeah.
I think especially in their case, and it's the case for most hip-hop and rap artists especially, when there's a rock band up there, you got 5 or 6 guys, it's a little more comfortable, I would think. But as someone who is just Ant and Slug up there, and he's the one rapping, so most people are focused on him, for him to be so personal with so many people must feel kind of strange, you know?
Definitely.
I mean, when he's at home writing, when he's feeling depressed, it's different than being out in public and showing that off.
Yeah.
Even if he knows people are listening, to see the people listening is probably a pretty strange feeling.
Definitely.
All right. Well, moving on from there, the next song is Wild Wild Horses.
Run wild, wild horses. You can't tame these horses.
So, this song, I wasn't really feeling it when I first listened to it, but the more I listened to it, the more it grew on me.
Yeah, I really enjoy this song.
It definitely has to grow on you.
Definitely, but I think it's got such a good message. Like, all three of these stories are about people who had this one person, and they loved this person, but for one reason or another, it was not good for them, and it would never work.
I didn't think it was 3 separate stories, actually.
Really?
Yeah, I think it's all Slug. I think this is the story of a relationship he was in where he couldn't stay loyal, couldn't just be with this one girl. But he still liked her. He still wanted the relationship to go on. But it never worked out. And he understands why. She's a wild horse, He can't keep her locked up. And so is he, He's also going out and chasing other women, even though he really does love this woman. But I felt like it was just a story about him and a relationship he had.
That's interesting. I'll definitely have to go back through the lyrics and see how that fits in.
I think it was both, honestly.
I can see that, it being both. I think, from my point of view, the 3 different stories, I think at the end of each verse, there's a distinct point where it's, they make the decision that it's better for them if they, stop pursuing this interest.
Yeah.
Production-wise, I'm not going to contribute to any of the lyrical. I mean, you guys, I agree with both of what you said. There wasn't much to it. It felt pretty simple. Production-wise, it's probably the most complex instrumental on the track, at least when it comes to the synths and, just all the mixing that went into it.
Yeah,
definitely. And I feel like the horns, especially during the chorus, are really stand out.
Yeah, I really love that. And I just love the whole chorus with the horns and the vocal layering. I'm kind of a sucker for vocal layering and choir effects and stuff like that. So that really... I
definitely like it. I just think the vocals could have been a little... I mean, the vocals are high throughout the whole song, except in the chorus. They bring them really down, but I guess it's probably to make room for the horns.
I didn't really notice that, personally. I felt
so if you listen to the verses, the vocals are much higher in the mix, but then when it comes to the chorus, it feels like they dropped them quite a bit, but it's probably just to make room for all the other instruments.
Yeah, I feel like that's important for a lot of choruses, because the chorus is the part that repeats, that everyone knows, so they don't really have to emphasize the vocals too much. And I feel like it's a good sign of a chorus if it is, toned down a little bit from the rest of the track.
It's probably also a result of, like Johnny said, the layering of the vocals. Usually when you layer enough of them, they have to drop it so it doesn't clip or anything. So
definitely.
I think it was a really well done song. I don't know if it's one of the standout songs to me, but it's a really well produced song for this album.
All right, well, then the next song is it's the third to last song, Can't Break. This is a pretty forgettable track to me. I don't
100% agree.
Really like it too much.
I don't really like the beat on this album, especially around the chorus. It gets really bad. I don't like it at all during the chorus. The flow and rhyme scheme is still fun, but I can't really pull much out of it.
I think this would be better performed live, and it feels like it's an 80s or 90s rock instrumental, and it's kind of the vibe that they have in some of their later albums with a few particular songs. But yeah, it's more forgettable, and again, live it would probably be much better.
I can see that, but yeah, I don't feel like there's much to this song.
Yeah. It doesn't even really get me energetic or anything, it's just sort of there.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Cool, let's move on.
Yeah, next song is the second to last song, The Waitress,
She's the only reason I visit, the only woman in my world that acknowledges my existence.
which we referenced earlier. This
Yep.
is another great story that Slug tells, you know?
Definitely. I really like that the sorrowful distant piano is only during the beginning and end of the track. Sort of like in the middle when he's talking about this waitress, he's distracted. He's not thinking about these regrets that he has, that he, like not being a better father for his daughter at the end.
Yeah.
And I think that's just really, really well done production.
Yeah. This is another song with a surprise ending, a twist at the end, which I think is shown in the album art. It says on the album art, it just says When Life Gives You Lemons, but then the full album title, which you don't see on the art, is sort of hidden, is You Paint That Shit Gold. It's a twist on what you expect with You Make Lemonade,
Yeah.
And I like that theme in the album for the most part. It doesn't always land, like I said, but I do think it adds to a lot of songs, makes them more memorable.
What's this? This is like the 5th or 6th reveal, I think, of the album. This is also one that kind of blew my mind. It was years ago, though, like when I first heard Yesterday in Her Music Box, which is next, but I first heard that, and then The Waitress. He really likes to do those reveals in the last bar or so. He doesn't do it like in the last verse or anything. It's literally at the very, very end.
Yep.
But the song...
I
Go
feel
ahead.
like that lends it more of a punch most of the time.
Yeah, and it's sort of like it makes you want to go back and re-listen to the song, with the new context.
It's like a twist in a movie where you go back and watch it again and are like, oh, I see it. And especially, the song doesn't end when he does a reveal. It sits there with the instrumental for 30 seconds or so to let you think about it.
Yeah, I feel like that's something we haven't really mentioned, but I really do like the sort of spaced out endings of a lot of tracks on this album that give you a little bit to stew on what the track has said.
Yep, for sure.
The only song I could think of that just ends, I'm pretty sure, is the song You, where it ends on a chorus. But the rest of them usually give you a lot of time at the very end, especially for something like this. And this is a beautiful and pretty sad song, which is why the beat complements it so well.
Yeah.
Definitely.
The whistling is an awesome loop, and the piano is nice, and the great dropouts every once in a while.
Yeah,
it
love
all adds to it.
the beatboxing. It really gives the song a great sense of setting. You know exactly where it is and makes you feel like you're on the streets with this guy, especially when the production drops out and it's just the beatboxing and Slug's almost spoken bars before the second verse.
Definitely.
And they're so lowered in the mix when he does that, or not in the mix, but like they're lower levels, and they sound like they're through like an AM radio or something kind of like gritty or not well produced.
It's not like recorded in a studio. It doesn't even feel like it. Feels like they're out on a street just rapping,
Yeah.
Which is definitely part of the homelessness that he's describing. Yeah, wonderful song. It's one of my favorites for sure.
Yeah. So now the final song on the album, In Her Music Box.
Lay down in that music box, escaping the sound of that music box.
This is probably one of my favorite instrumentals and beats of all time. It's just so well produced and it's so fitting.
Definitely.
Great production, but I don't know if I'd say it's one of my favorite of all time. It's not even my favorite amp beat of all time.
So the reason I think this instrumental is one of the best, just because of that loop of that piano, it really does sound like a kid's playing with a music box, or what are those called, like the pop-up toys or whatever.
Music box.
It's really just called a music box.
You're thinking of a Jack in the Box, but
There you go.
I think it's important to point out this song starts and ends with a music box, like the actual tones of a music box just plucking at the metal. But also I didn't realize this at first, but the album as a whole starts with a music box as well, and then it ends with one, which I
didn't
thought
notice
was
that either.
Yeah,
really
I listened
cool.
to this album on repeat a few times, in a row, like back to back to back, and you can barely tell when In Her Music Box ends and Like the Rest of Us starts. It's almost seamless.
Kind of makes you think, which one did they do first? Like, or where did they plan to put that first? And I think they might have done this song first. I'm guessing here because it fits so well.
I don't know. I think the opening track is just so significant and ties in way too well. Or do you mean like which track was produced first?
Yeah, which track? Like maybe not written first, maybe not finalized first, but like which one was like, yeah, produced first. Like this song is focused around that music box. That it's like a childlike piano. It's upbeat, kind of fun, even though the song, and he speaks to this child in the back too. You know, in the back of the seat. You know, as she's a little kid and talking about, you know, he's doing things like smoking weed, and it sounds like he's, you know, going to go buy weed too. And he's at the car show or whatever.
I thought it was him selling weed, not buying weed. I think,
I think it definitely
Daddy
is
drives
because...
around. It's because that's how he makes his money. When she says she can't spill anything in the car, it's because Daddy can't keep a messy office. That's how he makes his money, driving around and selling weed is what I got out of it.
It's
I partially thought that too.
Yeah, it specifically says that he drives a Buick, which is nice. It talks about how the dad doesn't like talking to police, but you know, when he sees them around, they're cool with him, and you know, they're probably paid off. I wasn't thinking weed. I think he definitely smokes weed because it does directly reference that. But I think he's probably selling a more profitable product than that if he has to pay off the police, you know?
I don't think he's paying off the police. I think that was just how the little girl interprets it. Because all it says is, it says he ain't trying to talk to police, but at the car wash they treat him like the star that she sees. So I think it was that she's innocent. She doesn't know what's actually going on. He doesn't want to talk to him, but they are bothering him, you know, trying to... Because they probably suspect something.
Okay.
I didn't get that second line. I thought it just meant like he doesn't mess with police and those aren't the type of people he talks with. But when they go to the car wash and, you know, he's meeting other people, not police, it has nothing to do with it. I think it's two separate lines.
Oh,
I don't.
Okay.
I disagree with that. I think it's just because then he's using a pronoun like 5 words after he said police that doesn't refer to the police, you know? That seems kind of weird to me.
Well, when I thought car wash, that's why I said like car show, car wash. Like I'm thinking like his friends there. Okay, so what I got from it, and while it crossed my mind that he might be a drug dealer, I kind of got from it that he could just be a deadbeat dad who all he does is has this nice car and this is what he spends his money on. And he just drives around all day. And when she's talking about a messy office, you know, that just like he lives in his car, basically. His car is everything. And while the mom is out working and making money, he goes and picks her up. He's just focused on his stupid car, just driving around with his daughter all day. He doesn't want to find a job. And while he definitely could be selling or smoking weed, which it references, I didn't necessarily think of him as like this big time drug dealer.
All right.
I don't think he's a big time drug dealer. I think that's just how he makes his money. He's just a dope dealer, you know, not.
Yeah, I can see that deal. Now. I also think this is a great closing track because all throughout this album, it's sort of talking about these people and they have to make a concerted effort if they want to look on the bright side of their situation. To this little girl, it's just natural. She just
listens to the beat.
Yeah, if something bad is going on, she'll naturally not want to pay attention to it, and she'll just highlight and idolize the good parts of her life.
Yeah,
This song really made me think of my childhood too, like when things were going bad or my parents would fight in the car. The music, either on my own MP3 or iPod or on the radio, would be like the thing I would focus on just to like, you know, tune out the rest of the world. Yeah. So it paints a really sad picture of this girl, but I think it's like that for a lot of kids. That's all they have.
Yeah,
I don't really see. I feel like because it's told from her point of view, it does paint a sad picture, but she doesn't view it that way at all, and she's okay with it. This is just life.
That's that's the sad part to me, because again, going from personal experience, the sad part is you don't realize how damaging that is to see your parents fight all the time. You know, you're in the car and they're fighting, and you get home and they're fighting. They're always fighting about bills, and you're picking the parent up from work and they're fighting again. Like,
Yeah.
she doesn't realize how dark it is. She doesn't realize how sad it is. But that's because she's ignoring it. And later in life, she might grow up to be that waitress or something with, you know, the issues he talks about later on. It's very likely that this girl is one of the other characters we hear about throughout the whole album. So that's the dark part to me.
That's an interesting idea. I hadn't considered that. That maybe she is a recurring character.
Yeah. I think it's just like a really good song, you know, about one of my favorite lines on the track is escape is a paradox because her childhood is locked inside that music box. It's like she can't really escape. That's just a part of her life, you know? It's not to distract her. It's just how she deals with things, and because of that, it becomes just another part of her life.
Also, I think it should be pointed out that I'm pretty sure music box is just the car that's playing music. You know, the car is a box, so it's not like an actual little jack in the box or anything.
I didn't think too much about what the music box was, but I guess I just thought of like a radio, you know, like a boombox, because she listens to it in her room and stuff too. It's not just in the car.
Yeah,
Like,
I think I can see it being the car is her music box.
oh yeah, now that I'm going back and looking at it, it doesn't
Like lay
actually
down
say.
in her music box, or Sweet Dreams Little Precious.
Yeah.
Lay down it. So she's falling asleep in the car, listening and losing herself inside the bass of the movement.
Yeah.
We're putting a lot of emphasis on this song, but I think it's one of the more meaningful ones, even with it being so simple.
Yeah, it does such a good job of capturing that childlike innocence. Through the eyes of this child, everything's fine. There's no reason to be concerned about anything.
It's just the way things are, you know?
Exactly.
And for an adult to write this, you know, he didn't write this when he was a kid. For an adult to write it, it does show his skill in being able to see, like everything else, he's seeing throughout this whole album, people's perspectives, you know, this woman's perspective, this old guy's perspective, this young man's perspective, his own perspective. And he's finally coming up on this, the perspective of a child. And that's not an easy thing to write. And even the way he speaks throughout this song is, you know, as a child would speak.
Yeah.
So
This whole album is definitely great at showing his prowess in stepping into someone else's shoes.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's the theme of the whole album, without a doubt.
Yeah.
All right, so let's move on to overall thoughts on the album. I'll go first since I picked it. This is probably one of my favorite albums of all time. I really like it. I think the emotional beats hit really hard. Slug is a master at rapping, you know. He has great wordplay and everything, you know. And Ant's production he's one of my favorite producers I know of. But just a fantastic album that really puts you in the shoes of other people and gets you to helps you understand just the daily life of people you might not have considered.
Yeah. And I do think it's really well handled, the mix of, you know, positive and negative emotions throughout this album. This could have been a lot darker than it actually is, but throughout the album you'll get these little breaks where it's more of a positive, upbeat song where you can kind of take a breather, and even if it is still a sorrowful message, it's viewed through a more positive light. Throughout the entire album, naturally, the performance vocally is just a treat. Doesn't matter what track, every single track, I would love to listen to just Slug rapping. And I don't know. It's good. Like, the production is always complementing the themes of the track. It's always ties really well into the vocal performance. I don't know. It's just a very, very, very well thought out album, I think.
All right,
It
Patricio.
definitely, yeah, it's definitely a well thought out album. No real features on it. I think it features a guitarist, because there's a very specific and well played guitar throughout the album. Pretty sure it features one, but there's no.
I think that might have just been Ant. I don't know.
It very well could have been. I think I also remember hearing about that, but might not have been. But there's no real vocal features. It's just mostly him, other than some backgrounds. So he does a wonderful job and always produces well. I will say though, listening to a lot of Atmosphere, this is one of my not least favorite albums of theirs, but I have more favorite albums. Usually their newer albums after this they just get better and better to me.
I disagree with that. I think their older albums are better. But
see, it's just a difference in like this definitely has some of my favorite songs of theirs on it, but some of them are not throwaway tracks, but they're not ones I would listen to or I care for by them. The album as a whole is very consistent, though one of their best storytelling albums for sure. It's basically just a book of stories, and it's a great job how they put it together. Every song fits on here. None of them feel out of place. So it's a really well put together album, just not one of my favorites by them.
I definitely put a lot of points into a well-constructed album. I do like singles, but I always prefer if an album flows and makes sense in its own context. And I feel
Which
like
it definitely
this,
does.
yeah, this does an incredible job of definitely sticking to the themes and still changing things up to be interesting all throughout.
Yeah.
I'll definitely be coming back to this album myself.
for sure. All right, so let's move on to our 3 favorite tracks and our 1 least favorite track on the album. I think there's going to be a lot of overlap if I had to guess, so I'll go first. My favorite track on the album is Guarantees, followed up very closely by Yesterday. I think those songs both go together. I think they're both really fantastic and feel personal, and the emotional punch of it just hits harder than most of the other tracks on the song, where not to say they don't hit hard, it's just those 2 tracks are so good. And then my 3rd favorite song is The Waitress. And then my least favorite is Your Glass House. It's the only one on the album I really disliked. I didn't hate it. It was just, I feel like it overstayed its welcome. And there's good lyricism in the song. It's just not my favorite on the album.
All right.
All right. TJ.
My personal favorites. Number 1 is definitely Yesterday. That song is incredible, and it has just such a good punch to it, and it's super relatable. Second would probably be Wild Wild Horses. That one's another one that I definitely relate to very strongly, and the production especially stands out on this one. And finally, I think my 3rd favorite would be The Waitress, especially considering the like opening and closing piano, not overstaying. It's not throughout the track because it has its meanings. It has its meaning mapped out already. Yeah. My least favorite would definitely be Can't Break. The production is just, I don't like it very much. The lyrical performance, it's fun. Not much to it. It feels kind of shallow and kind of like a throwaway track. Not really my thing.
All right, Patricio.
Yeah, so you were right. There is a lot of overlap. My favorite would be Yesterday. Even though that's like the radio hit and their most well-known song, it's one of those that holds up for a reason versus is just popular to be popular. Definitely a beautiful and sad song. My second favorite would be The Waitress, and as you guys already discussed, beautiful song, well written, a lot of meaning to it, well produced. And my 3rd favorite would be In Her Music Box, just because of, again, all the reasons we discussed. It was just beautifully produced and perspective-wise. My least favorite would be the intro track, Like the Rest of Us. I don't hate it as a track. There's a lot of good songs on this album. It just, I wouldn't really listen to it much. It was a little too slow for me. And that would be about it.
All right. Sounds good. Well, that was the 4th episode of the MP3Cast. Thank you for listening. TJ, you pick the next album. So what are we listening to next week?
All right. So next week, we're going to be discussing The Moon in Antarctica by Modest Mouse. Modest Mouse is a very well-known sort of indie rock group, and this is debatably their best album in their entire discography, which is quite extensive. I think you guys will like it.
I don't have any context for this album. I've only heard the name Modest Mouse through you, so I've never heard any of their music. What about you, Patricio?
Yeah, I have no idea, so I'll be going into this blind.
All right, interesting. I think maybe you guys might have heard Float On. That was pretty popular on the radio. They like playing it in stores, etc. But I don't imagine you know it by name.
Nope.
Yeah, no.
All right.
All right, well, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next week.